Now we move on to the concluding panel discussion of the day on green deals and green credits. I would like to welcome our esteemed moderator and panelists for the session on the dais. Mr. Raman Kalra, Vice President, Senior Partner, Communications, Sector Leader and Sustainability Consulting Team, IBM, is our moderator. Our panel members, Mr. Manish Chourasia, Managing Director, Tata Cleantech Capital, Mr. Dhruba Purkayastha, India Director and US-India Clean Energy Finance, Padmanabh Sinha, Executive Director and CIO Private Equity, National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. Mr. Pramod Rao is unable to join us today due to emergency. He conveyed his apology.
Absolute pleasure to be, a part of this very, very exciting discussion, a topic close to my heart, and I'm sure a topic close to a lot of people's heart in this room, and that's why you have taken out time to, come and be here and to talk and discuss and hear and listen about sustainability. We have a very exciting, mix of panel with us, with a lot of experience on money. We all need money. Yeah, so really what goes behind, the green deals, what goes behind the green credits. Green credits is a relatively new term, something that, that I do believe is going to become extremely important given the challenges that we faced on carbon credits, on the offsetting part of it. I'm not a very strong believer of offsets per se, but still, the carbons, the traceability, and in some, point in times, the integrity of a lot of those things, besides the RECs, besides the IRECs but the other parts of carbon credits. But green credits could become, a significant play if, the way it has been envisioned by Prime Minister Modi, just about a month and a half back, and also at COP28. If it goes on, that it will be significant, and it gives an opportunity to everybody in this room and outside, even in the individual capacity to do something and, and get incentivized with some credits out of that. Now that's a whole new world which will evolve as we go forward. And of course, we'll talk about that also, with the panelists here. We have, as you said, we have Paddy, you call him as Paddy, right? Can I call Paddy? Okay, or Padmanabh, right? Yeah. So we have, yeah. So we have Paddy from NIIF with a lot of experience in investing into this space. We have Dhruba, from USICEF, and doing a lot of programs around solar rooftop and the other businesses. And we have Manish from Tata Cleantech Capital. So very, very interesting mix. And without any ado, let's get going on this exciting discussion. So. Paddy, let me come to you straightforward, here. Now, the green deals really cut across. There are a lot of things that happen, on green deals, and be it on climate, the various facets in the value chain of clean tech and climate tech. What had been your priorities when, as NIIF, when you look at it? Because we see a lot of money getting into cool and exciting segments like green power, because everybody talks about it, right? And everybody talks about, and also for right reasons, the world, we need it, in COP28 now, tripling of capacity of renewable energy, India's own target of 500 gigawatts by 2030. So it's a no-brainer that it, of course, needs a lot of money. But then there are so many other areas in the value chain which are very, very important. It's like when people talk about ESG, people only talk about E. People never used to talk about S and G. Then people started talking about G because BRSR and SEBI, unfortunately, we don't have, Pramod with us, but in the panel. But because of those compliances and regulatory pressure, people started talking about the G part of it, the governance part of it, little bit. Social still not many people talk about, it's still a little neglected space, and hopefully it will pick up the momentum. Likewise, in the green deals, there's so many other segments which are, I'm sure, very critical. not in terms of size as green energy. So what's your take? What's the strategy? How do you really balance it out?
Sure.
What's NIIF outlook towards a more holistic Green Deal play out there?
No, that's quite a bit you have in the question there, Raman. So I'll try and
We have a lot of time, yeah.
I'll try and address the elements. If I go on for too long, please feel free to interrupt. But NIIF has been at the forefront of this whole decarbonization and climate play because NIIF is a sovereign anchored entity, but in the private sector, and therefore we have basically two goals that we have to meet, the intersection of two goals. The first is robust commercial returns, because without returns, it doesn't make sense for the other 51% investors and also the government, which is finally taxpayer money. But we also have to provide a catalytic growth effect in sectors of national significance and those which align with the long-term growth trajectory in India. So by definition, the entire green transition and decarbonization play fits in well, and we can go into further details on which ones particularly and at what stage they fit in well with our themes. And we now have $5 billion assets under management, but we also play in it in other ways. Our portfolio companies include, for instance, 2 NBFCs, which have more than $2 billion of loan book purely for green sectors. So it's not small. I mean, just $2 billion plus of loan book is for green sectors. We also have indirect play, including, for instance, through Satish's fund, which he was representing earlier. But on the direct side also, a few interesting things. One, we play across equity and credit, because private equity and private credit. Private equity, of course, but private credit through our NBFCs, for example. We cut across a bunch of industries. So renewable energy is one, of course, where we have one of the large top 10 platforms in India, IANA. But we have energy efficiency through smart metering. We have a play in electric mobility through A-Third, and then we are adding to that. And we are looking at other aspects like circular economy. We are looking at food and agriculture, sustainable aspects to it. So it's a very wide play in terms of sectors as well, in addition to the capital structure. Then we have different funds which are on different risk return profiles to play across this, and with different strategic angles. So infrastructure type or growth equity type, and then we have now a new fund with Japan, a bilateral fund with Japan, which is focused on two themes, one of which is climate preservation. And then we have the indirect play through funds that we back as well. So those are important elements. Then additionally, during the G20, during the US-India bilateral meet, it was announced that US-India will have a new fund for climate, which NIIF will manage. That will take some time to come off the ground, but that's an additional play, which is yet not in the 5 billion of AUM that I was telling you about, and that could be substantial in size. So that's on the green side, and in the subsequent questions, maybe I can elaborate on some of that. But you touched upon ESG also, which is different.
Yeah.
And ESG is intrinsic to us in all our investing, not just, and actually E, S, and G, and I'll come to
All three.
Because we think it's a no-brainer. G is a no-brainer for an institutional investor, that you are ultimately partnering with other stakeholders. You want to go into well-governed businesses because those will also treat you fairly in the long run. The E part, of course, this whole panel is focused around, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion around it. But as investors who are long-term investors, you're investing for 5-7 years, you want businesses which will be growth businesses when you are exiting as well. So you don't want to invest in mature industries where 5-7 years later, that industry will be dwindling. So climate is an obvious element to take care of, environment in there. But so social, because ultimately businesses will deliver long-term returns if you have stakeholders, employees, workers who are long-term motivated, aligned with the company. So we follow across most of our funds IFC performance standards for ESG investing. It's an intrinsic part of our investment analysis and portfolio construction. And it's integrated in fact, we collect key data elements. Of course, these things are evolving and we are learning and improving upon that. And I guess organizations like you have a big role to play in that, and using technology for it. But ESG is actually intrinsic to us for all our investing, not just climate investing.
Yeah, I think that's great, Paddy. It's a good way to kickstart the discussion. I'll come back to you in a while, especially on the point you spoke about certain segments dwindling, and I'll pick up a thread on that, non-scripted thread on that, and come back to you on it. Manish, Tata Cleantech, you're the first private financial institution in India issuing a sustainability-linked bond. How does you guys envision its role in pioneering sustainable financial practices in the country, in terms of segments, in terms of strategies, in terms of the whole motive behind the bond that you issued?
Yeah, so this bond was issued last year, and this is a 375 crores bond. It's a sustainability-linked bond. So in the cleantech space, we are seeing number of innovations in terms of financing. We have seen green bonds, we have seen sustainability bonds, we have seen sustainability-linked bonds. So this is one step, ahead beyond the green bonds and sustainability bonds. Essentially here, what we have committed is that we will ensure that we are doing funding in those segments which leads to carbon abatement. And if we are able to meet certain targets, then we get a benefit on pricing. So this is what the instrument is all about. Going forward, I feel that this instrument has a huge potential because right now, while we are seeing a lot of funds getting mobilized, in the last panel, we spoke about $1 trillion being mobilized, though the requirement is 5 trillion. But then what is happening is that if this fund comes from the developed countries to developing countries at commercial terms, then it might not really help because, already third world countries are in so much of debt. And they require a lot of funding for climate projects. So what is required is funding at a concessional terms and a blended finance. So this is one good step forward, where if you're meeting your goals, then you can get funding at a lower cost. And going forward, clearly, India needs a lot of funding on the climate sector. The ambitions are huge. And the requirement, as per our estimate, on a very conservative basis, is $1 trillion by 2030. And today, the entire credit market in India is less than 2 trillion. So it's a huge amount. And a good amount of this will have to come from the international markets. Of course, some will come from the domestic capital market, but most significant part should come from the international market, from multilaterals and other institutions. So clearly, if this kind of money has to come, then what we have seen is that because in third world countries, the currencies are very volatile. So sometimes you get funding at 1% or 2%. But after factoring in the currency depreciation, that actually becomes a very high rate. And because of that, a lot of corporates have a temptation not to hedge the currency risk. So even today, you will find that when corporates are borrowing in green bonds internationally, those exposures are not properly hedged. So suppose for some reason a movement happens in rupee, then actually they can have a significant loss. So essentially, to take care of these kind of issues, one needs to have innovative instrument, and I think this is a very innovative instrument. That's what I would like to say about it.
I think I agree. And what has been the usage and the adoption of this so far? How the experience had been since you launched it last year?
Yeah, so actually this is a very small amount compared to our requirements because this segment is seeing a lot of growth. And as per that, our book growth is also quite good, more than 25-30% per annum. So we have been able to use this very easily. So this can be used for renewable energy, it can be used for energy efficiency projects. And we would have already used this.
Okay, yeah. Dhruba, coming to you, and continuing the main theme, as a beginning theme of key considerations of segment, etc. Of course, you do a lot of work on rooftop solar. And it's a segment which has gone through multiple highs and lows also in terms of viability, in terms of expansion scope, in terms of the adoption, in parts of country, etc. How has been your experience in this whole, and how do you see the market evolving in India when it comes to rooftop solar? Are there viable, I'm using the word financially viable green deals in that space?
Raman, thanks. Thank you, BCCI, for inviting me to the session. And I think it's an honor for me sitting between NIIF and Tata Cleantech Capital. And frankly, I work for Climate Policy Initiative, which is actually a US non-profit institution and think tank. USICEF is a project which we had run for many years. So, as an advisory research think tank institution in India, and just drawing in my ex-employer, which has been IFC, and I think IFC has been involved in both NIIF and actually the creator of Tata Cleantech Capital. So it's an honor being there, and both of them have been referring to performance standards. It's great to see performance standards being referred to. Manish was talking about it outside. Paddy has been talking about performance standards here, and it was a huge, huge, massive effort for IFC to get performance standards mainstream. So this is one of the largest, I would say, funds, sovereign-backed, which has set up a green growth fund too. Satish is there. And first, I would say clean tech, climate, green, NBFC. So coming back to your question, he's been, Tata Cleantech has been a financier of rooftop solar. So what's the issues with rooftop solar? Let me start with a few numbers. You know, the potential for rooftop solar when we started many years ago, 5-6 years, it was about 400 gigawatt in India, assessed potential, 400 gigawatt. The policy target was 40 gigawatt as placed to be achieved in 22. Where policy reached, where implementation reached was 8 gigawatt. So, I'm just saying the potential, 400 gigawatt, policy targets 10%, what was reached was 20% of target. So you can see rooftop solar potential is huge and it is financially viable. It is financially viable for reasons discussed earlier in the earlier sessions. If you actually look at the cost of electricity, for a commercial unit, it will be 10-12 rupees. A rooftop solar you can get at 6. And look at the potential across the country. Just look at temples, schools, warehouses, storage. And it's not rooftop solar in Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore. It's rooftop solar across. The sun doesn't shine in metros, but there is rooftop solar in metros. So what are the issues and why didn't rooftop solar scale up? Now, there are a couple of reasons behind it. One, clearly the policy and the regulatory support was clearly missing, and you can see that the policy targets shifted towards large-scale solar. There's nothing wrong about it. Let's put it, there's nothing wrong. But rooftop solar could have been enabled to create distributed renewable energy, and distributed renewable energy is producing energy closer to the point of consumption. There are technical issues, but there are small technical issues. But the elephant in the room is the distribution companies. The distribution companies of the state are political animals. And therefore, the issue is when you lose a paying customer, Manish will bail me out here very clearly, when you lose a 12 rupees paying customer, then that hurts the distribution company. How could it have been compensated? We can take that. Is it financially viable? For sure. It's not only financially viable. Think of the potential. Okay, who's the employment creator in India? It's the SME sector, MSME, right? It's the potential of SME sector. MSME is about 20 gigawatt. And imagine the cost of electricity which constitutes the price of the finished goods which is produced, and that's reduced by half in terms of lot of auto components, foundries, textile, forging, across the board. So MSME can be solarized. Yeah. So I think it is financially viable, it is financeable, but there are constraints which are wider policy and regulation, both at the central and the state level.
So I'll stay on to you on this. I agree. When we look at it from a maths perspective, it is financially viable. And also, by the way, I do believe personally also that it is a significant component if we have to achieve the microgrids of the future as a reality. If we have to really look at the distributed energy resources, the microgrids, the prosumer economy growing up, where everybody, every household, every individual in some form and shape is a prosumer. So rooftop solar will play a significant role with, hopefully, with a small battery storage also getting financially viable model over a period of time. So I agree with you. But having said that, we still do you agree that the adoption of rooftop solar kind of slowed down, or you think it is actually growing at a right pace?
It's been made to slow down.
And why?
So I said the political reasons very clearly. The discoms, you cannot get the distribution companies give away their paying customers. Just think of an industry which is paying 12 rupees today. At a lot of states in India, it's the cost of power is probably highest in the world per unit of electricity. So when you are giving up that, there is a cross subsidy which is going across for what? For a variety of consumers. Even you and I probably are subsidized in our residences with electricity. Then you're coming across to the farm sector.
Okay, so
So very clearly we are talking about there is a potential, it is financeable. I'm saying it is credit worthy and there is returns, but it's not happening, and therefore private industry is moving out of it. You need developers, and by the way, the program in USICEF, we mobilized 300 million from 50 odd projects, and Tata Cleantech Capital was one of the major financiers. So it's possible.
Yeah. Okay, I'll come back to this, and because this is an important part, of the whole piece of puzzle. But Paddy, coming back to you, you also spoke about in the initial comments about infrastructure fund for things like smart metering, and you have investments in let's say IntelliSmart, are doing a lot of, and they are by far the leaders in India with I think about 2.5 or 2.5 crores meters, order book, with them already. Now India is, and since Dhruba also touched upon the discom aspect to it and the and the financial angle to it, and therefore this question. Now India is home to about roughly 250 million meters, both residents and the grid meters. So roughly about 250 million meters, almost 70% of that yet to be awarded, and almost 95% of that yet to be implemented on ground, under the RDSS revamped distribution sector scheme of, $38 billion funding which the government had set aside for that. Now that's a lot of money. And what happens when people talk about climate finance, when people talk about green deals, when people talk about green credits, the de facto discussion goes on to incremental capacity. The de facto discussion goes on to setting up new renewable energy plants, or whether it is biomass or whether it is, the other areas. But very little discussion really goes into energy efficiency. And it was very heartwarming to see that COP28, touched upon it, and there was a big focus on 2x increase on energy efficiency being spoken at COP28. A dollar saved is dollar earned, and the same logic applies on the climate change crisis. So with the investment that you do on smart metering, what was the philosophy behind that? And if you can just share a little bit about the thinking behind the smart metering initiatives in India, because it is about laying a foundational layer, infra layer, on top of which the whole sector will reform over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years if policy interventions get done. So I think would love to hear your thinking about that, and continuing the theme of energy efficiency. What are the other kind of green deals that you see happening in energy efficiency?
I think smart metering is a bit of a no-brainer because it is effectively improving the discom health also, right? I think the point Dhruba made is a separate point about who's subsidizing which and politically how easy or difficult it is to raise prices. But this is about reducing losses in the system. So this is a clear benefit to everybody, including the discom for sure. And therefore, I don't see any major challenges on creditworthiness, etc. here. And I see a good impetus and sort of good momentum behind this business. It also, in this age of AI, provides a lot of intelligence about consumers. It can allow for various other things in the future in pricing, etc. So I think I don't see too much of a dilemma on the smart metering side. Then on the whole, I think I referred to earlier the whole renewable energy and electric mobility spaces. I think renewable energy, more the industrial scale stuff, I think is one of the more mature climate sectors in India, where you are having standalone viability for debt and equity investments. Of course, strong policy initiatives earlier were a game changer, like the establishment of SECI, obviously was so critical because it provided a creditworthy off-taker.
Correct.
But today, I think we are at a stage where very little additional policy support, etc., is required, and you have lots of capital, including global capital, going into that sector. But there's the entire supply chain linked with it, all the way back to panels and then backward integrating, where I think India needs to do more. And there is an opportunity, thanks to China plus one factor, the geopolitical advantages they are there of improving our value chain there. Similarly for electric mobility. Well, electric mobility is not a mature sector yet.
But very fast growing.
It's fast growing, but it's still evolving, because it still requires regulatory support at this stage, because the ecosystem is not yet developed significantly. Penetration in most segments is still single digit. And then there, the whole ancillary system, and most importantly, cell manufacturing also needs to start off in India. So that's a sector, if you ask me, if renewable energy is mature, that's still sort of evolving or intermediate, but a lot of growth opportunity, and again, across the value chain there. And energy and transportation are, along with food and agri, are probably the three biggest sectors which matter. Of course, industrial as well, steel, cement, from a climate perspective. So I think in these two sectors, if you can get some of the bottlenecks out and also have the full value chain established, it makes a tremendous difference.
I think I agree with you, and I'm so glad that you picked up the smart metering, and it's a no-brainer. Yet it has taken India a lot of years to get the ball rolling, which is a different debate altogether, why it is like that. But now that it is moving, and hoping that if the government continues, that then the momentum will continue, and within the next 5 years, probably it will be done and dusted. It will be rolled out pretty much on the ground. But it will open up a big new possibility of demand response mechanism. And that demand response ability will help cut down the peak loads. And so much of capital, gets allocated. People always say that, we need to have incremental capacity to be built. But you're always building incremental capacity by burning billions of dollars for peak load management, whereas you should be spending maybe a fraction of that money to manage the peak load, shave it off, right? So I think that will become a reality, hopefully, in India, because of the work that you are doing on the smart metering. I think that's just brilliant work. Hope to see much more of that coming up. Manish, picking up the same theme, you guys also invest across a lot of sectors. You guys invest across, if I whether it is green energy, mobility, e-mobility, green logistics, storage, hydrogen, biomass, energy efficiency. Would you like to share, that how the green deals are building a momentum in some of these areas again? But my specific emphasis would be on energy efficiency, if you can elaborate that a little bit.
Sure. So traditionally, we have seen that renewables have grown in India, and that's likely to continue. Wind, solar rooftop. What has really changed in the last couple of years is the emphasis on the energy storage. So now, whether it is battery storage or it is pumped hydro or it is green hydrogen, these segments are taking off. Battery has made good progress, though a lot needs to be done. A lot of technological changes are happening, both on business models and technology. And we are seeing projects which are coming up. In fact, even in the renewable sector, now we are seeing 24/7 power. And those are backed by either pumped storage or battery storage or mix of solar and wind. So that is something which is new. Apart from that, I would say electric mobility in the last 2-3 years, traction have gone up exponentially. Electric buses, we have seen a lot of traction. And can only improve because now government is coming out with the equivalent of SECI in this segment. The key issue was the payment risk of the state transport corporations, which I think will get addressed. And we have seen 2-3 auctions where a number of contracts have been taken by the private sector. This can only improve. So this is on the electric buses. Then on two-wheelers and three-wheelers, today if you run certain kilometers, then actually the total cost of ownership is lower than the ICE vehicles. So that segment is ripe to take off. And already in the e-commerce segment, in the logistics, we are seeing that a lot of companies are now going for only two-wheelers and three-wheelers which are based on electric mobility. So that segment is clearly taking off. On the passenger segment, it will take more time. But what we are seeing is that actually the battery storage cost is coming down. And at some point, we will reach a point of disruption. Other area where we are seeing a lot of traction is waste to energy.
Yeah, that's again very, very vital.
Yes, yes. So we have a huge problem of pollution in India. So to address that, plus to address the abatement of carbon itself, this segment is very important. And as we go ahead, the Indian cities are going to generate a lot of waste. And now technology in this sector has improved significantly. And government is emphasizing a lot of, they're giving a lot of incentives to this sector. And I think this sector is ripe for takeoff. On green hydrogen, again, government has come out with a very interesting policy. And I believe that at least the industrial hydrogen, which today is based on fossil fuels, will very soon convert to green. And there will be a lot of pressure on the industries, fertilizer industry, petrochemical industries, to start blending some green hydrogen along with their conventional gray hydrogen. And that segment will take off significantly. What is going to happen is that going forward, we are going to see the cost of solar and wind coming down because a lot of innovation is happening on the module technology. Now we are seeing TOPCon models, IGBT core modules. And as the PLFs goes up, the cost of power will come down. And that itself will make green hydrogen more competitive, apart from the reduction in the chemistry itself. So clearly, segments like electric mobility, then your green hydrogen, pumped storage, waste to energy, these are the new segments which are coming up. And I think the potential is exponential.
So I'll pick one of this thread and I'll, again, Paddy, come back to you, and Dhruba, I'll come right after that to you on the same question. Green hydrogen, now hard to abate segment, the industries, whether it is chemical, fertilizer, shipping, aviation, and many others, it's one of the biggest sector. And a lot of enterprises, a lot of large conglomerates, manufacturing organizations, they have set their own self-defined targets that we will turn net zero, or carbon neutral by so and so year, 10 years, 5 years, 15 years down the line. Now, one big chunk for the manufacturing organizations, under the RE100 or otherwise also, it's relatively easier execution to shift to green power because it actually becomes cheaper for them in the longer run, right? So that's a no-brainer, that decision will happen. But to shift from gray hydrogen to green hydrogen, in a lot of cases would mean capex into the core machinery that they have at the factories. It is not just about replacing the fuel, there is much more to that. And that money, that investment, if it is, if the targets are voluntary, then where do you think what is that trigger where, the industries can step up and walk that journey faster than thought of? Is it the easy and maybe not so easy, but it is easy and cheaper capital that will be a trigger for them to do that? Because we carried out a sustainability global report, sometime back, a few months back, and one of the parameters in that global report was that, by the board and the CXOs, the CEOs, is sustainability, purely a cost driver or a profit driver? And we were so pleased to see that more than 50% of the CEOs said that they see it as a profitability initiative, not just as a cost measure. Now, whether it was just a lip service or they mean it by their heart, nobody can say that. But the fact is that if you actually do it, you're in the long term, you can be more profitable because of pure growth that you can achieve. If all that is true, we still don't see action happening on shift to green hydrogen, and it is always a question, so far at least, on, again, the viability. So any thoughts on that? Paddy.
Sorry, you want to go first? Wait, actually, it'd be useful to get your inputs in, and then
Yeah, that's a good fight. Okay, Dhruba, you.
happy to comment post.
Okay, thanks, Ram. Do I start with the last? Is it a cost driver or should I?
Whichever way you want to do that, yeah.
No, unfortunately, it is actually a cost driver.
I disagree, but still.
Yeah, I understand. Why is it a cost driver? So let's look at it. Corporate value needs to have a metric, and that metric is the return on investment, right? I mean, if it is a return on investment, there's a cost to sustainability, which you are imposing cost on a private profit today. But the problem lies in what Carney said about it's a tragedy of horizons, right? Why is it tragedy of horizons? It's a tragedy of horizons because you discount money tomorrow at 15%. Where does this come from? Had you discounted at 5%, you would not have looked at the future with such a disdain. So it's an intergenerational problem that the corporate value today is neglecting values, and therefore sustainability is what we are talking of today as sustainability, and it is sustainability and growth. Unfortunately, on the short term, it is a cost driver, and therefore you need regulation to enforce that, and that's what is coming in. Now, coming on to green and gray hydrogen. To the best of my estimates, the differential is about $1.5 to $2 per, as required per kg. That's the level of differential that is coming, and I think Manish alluded to it by saying that, look, as technologies in renewable energy and as the battery technologies cost curve comes down, both with technology and scale, it's actually a sharp exponential curve down, which we have seen in solar, and therefore what's happening is you will today get electricity at much lower than whatever fossil fuels will produce, and therefore green hydrogen therefore will equivalently be cheaper. Why is it costlier today? Because electrolyzers are not available, and China Plus is what you referred to, China Plus One, and that's a huge driver for electrolyzer manufacturing, and link it to PLI schemes which are happening. And that production is going to lead to, it's a capital cost, will lead to lowered green hydrogen cost. In the meanwhile, what probably needs to be done is, what I was hearing in the last session, is what about thinking of it on a classical old school infrastructure project with a hydrogen purchase obligation. It's a classical project finance PPA structure at which power plants were built for 15 years. So you create a bidding for the price and pay it off as a viability gap, which then reduces over time, and therefore the fiscal burden on the state, it pays back at later. And I'll give you an example of a water project which was done 15 years ago in Andhra Pradesh, where the government paid subsidy and got it back. So for the government, the net present value was zero. So that's what hydrogen can work today. And when you look at technology and scale costs are coming down, they will match. Thank you.
I agree with you 100% on everything you said, except the first line of cost versus profit. We'll come back to that. Paddy, coming on to you. I think my more specific question on this is not the cost of green hydrogen. I think the cost of green hydrogen by, as the technology evolves, electrolyzers and the mass and all will of course keep going down. And the advantage of shipping it across the world is also there. The question is the process changes that need to be done at the manufacturing level. And in many cases, the equipment and machinery adoption that needs to be done. So that's also a part of a capex. And that's a decision that the board has to take, when you're sitting as a disruption. What will be a trigger to kickstart that?
Yeah.
What could be a trigger?
I think that two obstacles that needs to pass. One is even from a long-term perspective, what is the IRR? So it might require years of investment because, as I mentioned to you, in climate there are more sort of evolved segments, intermediate segments, and earlier segments. So I would put green hydrogen still in an earlier segment, but it's possible that a corporate, deep-pocketed corporate, if it has the ability to invest for a few years, there is a good return at the end of that, along with some of the other drivers like electrolyzers being at low cost coming in, etc., and the difference in costs coming down. So there could be a financially viable decision to invest in it, but the payback would be a few years out. So that's the first thing. The second is that in some of these sectors, it is useful and that's where these concepts like blended finance, which is also a major discussion point at COP, come in, where you can marry concessional finance with commercial finance to reduce the return thresholds, at least in those early years, apart from any obligations which you mentioned, which would be there on blending or mixing. So to me, it has to be a combination of these three things. One, certain investors seeing, even though it requires a few years of investment, that having good visibility on a payback and a good return there. And secondly, sources of blended finance, etc., which help, apart from any obligations that are there, which push investments in that direction.
Yeah, I think I agree, and it is good to see that. I was talking to a senior executive of one of India's largest renewable energy company, and he said the same thing, that our strategy will be on full throttle on green hydrogen, because that's the way that the world will definitely move to. But it will also take about 18 to 24 months for it to fructify and see some shape. Now, nobody knows that 18 to 24 months, what new technology will come up suddenly from where, So that's the beauty of this segment, overall. Shifting the gears a little bit to one of the more recent announcement that happened at COP, and before that in October, when the government made on green credits. What's your take on that? Manish, you want to start with you, the voluntary initiatives that anybody can take, be it individuals or enterprises or corporates, on degraded land and do a lot of work around that and get credit and incentivization?
So, in the earlier COP, we have talked about carbon credit. The important thing is to put a regulatory framework in place, which I believe government is working on.
Yeah.
And, it's important because there's a lot of tendency for greenwashing at times. There are a lot of announcements which are made, but if you add up those announcements, you won't see that impact on the environment. So I think while green credit is a more broader term, and clearly within that there will be a lot of shades, dark green, medium green, light green. But what is important is that, like we have seen in some of the other geographies, Europe, there is a very efficient emission trading system, even in China. I think we need to have a proper carbon trading market with proper rules. So currently we have a voluntary market, we have a regulatory market. But voluntary market is, there are a lot of loopholes there. So I guess we as a country has to come out with proper rules for trading. And we have to make the rules of the game very clear. Once that happens, then a lot of segments which are today not viable but important, like afforestation, or maybe, carbon capture, direct carbon capture, those segments may become viable. And the cost of renewable may come down further because there will be additional source of revenue. So I think we have to get that first in place. And it is all right to talk about green credits, but I think that will be a step number 2. So I think we should take one step at a time.
Yeah, Paddy, if this green credits, and given whatever Manish said, and I agree, the regulatory frame, it's a new thing, I'm sure the regulations will be defined, will be put to force. And hopefully it will not have the problem of the greenwashing that we have been facing in carbon credits, offsets, and that's why corporates have been, getting little, concerned about it as a means to offset their, in the net zero journey. They have been shying away from it now. And it has also reflected in the carbon prices worldwide. The credit price has gone down dramatically. Now, if the right regulations evolve, this could be a very fragmented set of initiatives and smaller initiatives, whether it is mangroves, whether it is, agriculture-based, whether it is water preservation-based, initiatives to be done by maybe a group of individuals or small bodies, etc. Do you think, there would be a right kind of financing model available for that segment also, or it will have to be pretty much on self-sustainable model? Yeah.
I don't
It's kind of a micro financing kind of a thing.
Evolved perspective on this yet, because I think it's relatively new.
Yeah.
It's an innovative market-based mechanism, and with the idea of having appropriate audit and legal frameworks around it, and then finally liquidity or a trading system for both the people who want to meet their obligations and the people generating green credit. As an institution, we are a little bit more institutionally focused rather than on the retail sort of SME segment. But I think it's a step in the right direction. I think they started with water and forestry.
Correct.
So let's see how it pans out, but the endeavor is, I think, in the right direction.
Great, yeah. Dhruba, any last comments on this?
Yeah, green credit. So you're talking of the MOFCC, the new system of green credits which has come for forestry. Okay. So let's start with, let's separate the carbon credits, which is Ministry of Power, and let's separate green credits, which is Ministry of Environment and Forests. I'm assuming you understand in India, departments and ministries do not work.
Leave aside the diplomacies and the government.
So the point is, the fungibility of the two is not possible now. Green is difficult to measure, whereas carbon is easier to measure, right? So you monetize something which you can measure. When you cannot measure something, it's a hard monetization. Now the question is, it's a great effort. It aligns with the LIFE launch in G20, Lifestyle for Environment, and therefore you are sort of distributing the effort to retail, to municipalities, to FPOs across the board to carry out these green initiatives, right? But the difficult part of it is, how do you measure, and Manish was referring to it, on the shades of green, and therefore how do you therefore monetize, because even if I were to get an offset, there needs a buyer and there is a market creation required for the offset market. Whereas in carbon credits, that is there. That is sort of obligation is there. You don't have an obligation today. And the evidence for that comes in the launch of the green fixed deposit scheme, and there are bankers over here who have launched it. But the differential in pricing, the citizen does not pay or accept lower rates for a green fixed deposit. So there is a lifestyle change and a value system change required for retailization of that across the board. It's great, but difficult to implement.
Okay, I think on that note, we are really running out of time, and I've been shown and given signal a few times already. By the way, anybody in the room, if you believe in this green credit, I at least feel that it's going to be a great business opportunity in times to come. Think about that. And maybe one last raise of hand on something that I had parked with Dhruba. How many of people in the room believe that spending money on sustainability initiatives is just a cost driver and not a profitability-linked initiative? I hope you're all true to your heart. So that's good to see that on that very heartwarming note. And I agree with you, Dhruba, you meant in the short term and the long term. So you are also correct on that. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the exciting discussion. Loved it, yeah.
I would like to thank our speakers for thought-provoking deliberation at the panel discussion. May I invite now Mr. Sandeep Khosla to present a memento to our panelists for the token of appreciation. To Mr. Manish Chourasia. Mr. Dhruba Purkayastha. Mr. Padmanabh Sinha. And Mr. Raman Kalra. I request all the panelists to stay back for a group photograph. I request panel members for a stay back for a group photograph. Mr. Kalra. May I now invite Mr. Mahesh Chandak to give closing remarks and vote of thanks for today's event.
Thank you, Aniha, and thank you, BCCI, Bombay Chambers, again for the opportunity. So first of all, I personally thought it was a wonderful, wonderful half day spent. A lot I learned, and really the sheer enormity of this whole sustainability and what all it entails. A lot of notes I have taken and a lot of follow-ups I need to do. I hope for you also it has been the same. Let me start by first thanking, the organizations who have sponsored this event. So HUL, HSBC, PwC, and DTDC. Thank you so much for supporting this event, to get people in the room and also taking care of us for the last, half a day. A sincere thanks to Shri Jayantji Sinha, a chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance, Parliament of India, and the BJP Lok Sabha MP from Hazaribagh, Jharkhand. I think what he said, though he was remote, I think his message was really felt by us in the room. And what he said, that we need to look away from farm to a brown factory and a development model which looks at farm to a green frontier. So I think that development model based on digitization and decarbonization is the way to go for India in the coming decades. And I think he set the tone and all the thought leaders that we have really, at least to me, proved that incorporating sustainability into our corporate strategy is the way to go to ensure, the title of this event, which is Sustainability for Growth and Value Creation. I think it did not leave any doubt, at least in my mind. I hope it is the same for you. And this growth is, of two types, right? One is the green growth for the planet, and really the second is the inclusive growth for the people. And that also came out very nicely through all the deliberations, all the panel discussions, and the fireside chat. I think topics which really resonated to me were around innovation, the funding for those innovation, the partnerships to bring those innovation to life, and also then the fast scale-up that is required in view of the enormity of the challenge and the opportunity that we face in India. So overall, from my side, I hope this third edition lived up to your expectations also. A lot of effort has gone by Anirban and the Sustainability Committee under him, Sandeep Khoslaji and Aniha and the BCCI Secretariat, all under able leadership of Ritesh Tiwari from HUL, as president of BCCI. So I think a big round of applause to this team who put this, wonderful show for us, and at least I personally enjoyed. And last but not the least, as I said, we have to celebrate the achievement of milestones along the way. So congrats again to all the organizations who won the awards today. And we look forward that more, join this. It is not a zero-sum game, as Ritesh wonderfully said. We can all win by learning from each other and making sure we progress. So with that, I thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mahesh. And thank you all for coming. Just to inform all those who don't know, in another hour we celebrate our 188th Foundation Day. So all of you are invited to stay back and join us. At around 7:30 we begin, and our keynote speaker is Mr. Rohit Java, who is the president of HUL. And then we have a presentation by one of our committees on economic outlook on the scenario worldwide, as well as a survey which the chamber conducts regularly. So 7:30 is when we begin, but before 7:30, this hall is going to go through all the changes. So we invite you to come and join us for some tea outside. And if you all have time, please join us at 7:30 for the Foundation Day. Thank you once again for coming, and hope you had a lovely time.